Okay, so it is the end of Camp Nano, or rather yesterday was the end of Camp Nano. Now I did videos over the past couple days, but I looked back on them and I didn't want to post them because I got really sick again. I thought I was better, and then I went into work, and then the next morning I woke up and I felt like total garbage. My nose was somehow runny and stuffed at the same time. I was coughing, my lungs were hurting, and in those videos I was coughing a lot. So I'm gonna redo this a little bit and basically explain what I did in those videos just a tad bit more concisely. So hopefully it's not too echoey in this video. I really have to put some curtains up in this room and get a little bit more furniture in here. But sorry. But anyway, so with this, let's start off with my word count. I did win Camp Nano this year because I hit my 30,000 words. In fact, yesterday I went back through and I deleted some of my notes about things that needed to be changed or added or something that I had already gone back and changed and added at some point. Just because I did, I felt like doing them that day, and it added to my word count to add them, so I figured I may as well. Now that brought me back down below the 30,000 by about 600 words. So I went ahead and did that 600 words yesterday. I did get back up above 30,000. I got back to like 30,009 words or something. So, sorry. So I did win Camp Nano this year, and I'm happy about that. My feelings about this Camp Nano are not as positive, however, as last NaNowrimo or the Camp Nano before that. I just don't feel as accomplished. Now that might partially be because I didn't challenge myself enough. I chose a pretty low goal of only doing 30,000 words, and in the past, even for Camp Nano, I did 40,000 words, which would have been a little bit more challenging. So I think that's part of it. Also, like I've mentioned many times in these videos, I'm just not enjoying writing this story. Even though, like I mentioned, when I go back and I read it, I'm like, it's a good story. Like I get pulled in when I read it, and I'm enjoying it when I read it. I'm just not enjoying writing it. And I think it's partially because it's a much slower pace, partially because this book is basically like the apocalypse, whereas the third book in the series was like the post-apocalypse, so things are like pretty much getting better by that point. I mean, they got a lot of problems still, but like people have like a more general sense of levity. And in this book, it's just bad stuff's happening all the time, and this poor character already had problems before this happened, so it's not a lot. I mean, it has happy moments. It definitely has happy moments, and there's very much an ebb and flow of bad stuff happening and then them figuring out a solution, and then more bad stuff popping up that they didn't foresee being a problem with what their solution was. But it's not as much fun. There's not as much sarcastic stuff. There's not as much jokes, and it's a much slower paced book than the third one. And that's what's necessary for the story, but it's definitely not as fun to write. So I'm just coming out of this Camp Nano just not feeling nearly as satisfied as I was in the previous NaNowrimo, as well as the other Camp Nano that I did. On a more positive note, let's talk about what my plans are from here. Because like I mentioned, I'm not really enjoying writing this story. I don't really want to press myself to finish this story faster than what would be good for the story, because I can tell that at this point, since I'm almost at the end of chapter 14, and there are a total of, well, there were 20 chapters outlined, but now there's 23 chapters outlined because stuff got added. That at this point, I'm very capable of starting to rush the book, and I don't want to do that. And I think if I stuck to my original plan, which was to continue to write 1,000 words a day until the book is done, hopefully finishing the book by about mid-May. If I stick to that, then I think I'm going to end up with a rushed ending. So to prevent that, what I'm going to be doing, and also because I'm having a hard time staying interested in writing this book, like this, it's the weirdest feeling that when I go back and read it, I like it. I just don't like it when I'm actually writing it. But so that's not a problem, and so that I can also spend a little bit of my writing attention on other stuff that I want to spend my writing attention on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch my goal to doing 600 words a day. That's like a half hour for me, or like 2 really good 10-minute word sprints. So that's enough time that I should have other time to do other writing projects if I wanted, like the short story that I worked on this past weekend, which I really enjoyed. That was like such a nice little refresher. Oh, that was fun. I really enjoyed writing that. And I also realized that maybe I would enjoy writing like high fantasy, because that's what that was. And now I'm like, my brain got going a million miles an hour into this world in this short story, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it has all this interesting history and it's just a short story. How is that possible? Anyway, I'm getting off track. So my goal is going to be to write 600 words a day instead of 1,000 words a day. 1,000, I don't know why, but like that little 400 word difference like makes it into an hour's worth of work instead of like a half hour's worth of work, because I start slowing down at the end. But so that's my goal, is to do 600 words a day. That should still get me probably through the rough draft, because some days I'm gonna probably do more. I'll like get into a scene and I'll do more than 600. But that should probably get me through the rough draft by the end of May, which is really the deadline I kind of gave myself on finishing this rough draft anyway, so I won't fall behind. And then in June, I'm going to be trying to write the outline for the second book. However, I can tell that I'm just not feeling like doing the second book either. Like, I feel the same way about the second book as I did about the first, and it's just going to be, I can tell I'm gonna have to trudge through it unless I do something to like add some comedy to it. I think considering the events that are gonna happen in the second book, I'm gonna have to like watch some movies or something that'll give me an idea of how in that environment, that kind of environment, like comedy and personality and stuff can be added in without it just being a major like depressing thing. I mean, this book isn't majorly depressing. There's plenty of like moments of like little funny things. Like he has this quippy, sarcastic relationship with one of the nurses where if anybody else heard them talking, like you'd think these people freaking hate each other, but like they get it and they're really just being very quippy with each other. And they just razz each other constantly when they talk, but they get it because they're close friends. And then he has these little comedic things with the little girl that he's getting attached to, where like he's bribing her with candy to like behave herself and like take naps and rest because she needs to rest so she recovers. So he like bribes her with candy, and they make jokes about how he must be like 1,000,000 years old because he's balding a little bit and stuff. So there's like little things like that, but it's just not nearly as much as in my third book. Not my third book. My second book I ever wrote, the third book in this series. It's so confusing. But anyway, this video is going to start getting long here. I'm going to try to wrap this up. So basically that's my plan. I'm going to commit to trying to do 600 words a day until this book is done. Or not until the book is done, until the end of May. Hopefully that'll finish the draft. If I'm not finished with the draft by then, I'm going to have to up my goal again until I'm done with the book. But if I can do 600 a day, that's like 18,000 something, I believe. And I'm at like 30,000. I don't think this book is more than maybe a 50,000 word book for the rough draft. So, sorry, I got a tickle. I had like post-nasal nonsense. But can you tell I'm a fan of alliteration? But that's that. Let's hurry up and wrap this up with a little bit of writing advice here. I was gonna do like a rapid fire writing advice at the end to make up for the fact that I missed days, but I'm not going to, because part of the reason why I missed certain days is I was like, I could totally sit down and do my video real quick, but I can't think of any writing advice that I haven't already done. So I could come up with a bunch of little like stupid obvious ones, but I'm not gonna do that. So here's the writing advice that I have, and I wish that I could have followed this a little bit better in this book, because I did do this in my third book and it made it go so much faster in writing. And also a lot of my betas commented on the fact that they really liked this and it helped propel them through the story, kept them hooked, and kept them them going, is to basically view every chapter as if it's like an episode on TV. If you can write the chapters like it's an episode on TV, then you get that just one more chapter as soon as they finish, like, feeling on it. I mean, how do you feel at the end of every Game of Thrones episode? You're like, I want the next one right now. Why do I have to wait a week? If you can get that into the end of each chapter, not necessarily with a cliffhanger, but just with something new just happened. It doesn't necessarily have to be a cliffhanger, it doesn't necessarily have to be something big, but you either introduce somebody new that's interesting or something, give it like a feel like it's a chapter, or not a chapter, like it's an episode in a show, then people are more likely to want to keep reading it. I've found that that worked very, very well for me on my third book. I wish I would have done that a little bit more with this first book. And I'm thinking more and more that I need to just publish the third book in the series first and then go back and just have these be additional stories that give background, except for I'm like worried they'll suffer from prequel-itis, but I'm kind of like, that's kind of okay now because I'm writing them and I'm just like, yeah, they're more of a prequel. Like, let's start with this other one but then I'm worried that people would be jarred by the difference in tone, and might be better to start off with the less happy-go-lucky one. I mean, the other one isn't super happy-go-lucky. Like, I have this belief that if you don't cry at least once in a book, it wasn't a good book. I don't really read comedy books. I like to read books that have a nice mixture of everything. And if a book doesn't make me cry at least once, even if it's tears of laughter, then I don't define it as a good book. So that's what I kind of aim for. Anyway, I'm starting to just ramble, so I'm gonna wrap this up. I think I already gave my writing advice. I wrapped up where I ended at the end of the month. I kind of went over my overall feelings of this Camp Nano versus other ones, which is not as good, but I mean, I just feel like it would have felt more accomplished if I had set a higher goal. I probably would have felt better about it, even if I failed, but I had gotten more words done than I did this month. Anyway, that's the end of my ranting for me. I'm sorry this wasn't a more positive note. I'm gonna blame the fact that it was a less positive book. We're gonna do that. Yeah, that's it for me for today. I'm gonna let you guys go, and you guys have a good one. Let me know if you have any writing plans after this Camp Nano and what you're gonna be doing from here.